so quick review. I've got the ECU flashed on my ZX6R. It's a 2020 KRT edition. And what I did was I took it up to ECU up to Moore Mafia, Chris Moore, to do the ECU flash. And so what we did was we removed a bunch of throttle restrictions. We removed, added in back the ignition that they pulled. They pulled about 4 degrees of ignition advance up around 14,000 RPMs and beyond. Eliminated the O2 sensors. We did the changed the ride-by-wire throttle to more of a 1-to-1 ratio, so it was more linear because it was a little laggy before. You could tell it was ride-by-wire and not conventional. Got rid of the high top speed limiter. Did some really cool things with it and woke it up. It really feels good. It's not like, you know, we gained crazy horsepower or anything like that. My butt dyno says we probably picked up 3 or 4 peak, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. When you get rid of those throttle restrictions, what happens is when you've got ride-by-wire here, so we've got throttle, when you go ahead and you twist the throttle to 100%, it gives you 100%. The ECU says, okay, you want 100, I'll give you 100. Up to 14,000 RPMs. And at that point, even though I'm still holding it wide open and it'll still rev past that, but the secondary throttle plates close to 62%. So you get your peak power and then it goes and just falls on its face. And so there is more power to be had out there. And so between keeping those throttle plates open and putting back that 4 degrees of ignition advance, and we extend the rev limiter out to 15,750 RPM, it'll now hold and keep building power, and it'll slowly taper off rather than going to 14 and going and just literally falling on its face. So if you look at through the rev range here, if we had this on a dyno or something like that, you might only see 1, 2, 3, 4 horsepower, you know, maybe in the mid range and up to peak, which is not you can feel it, but it's not, oh my gosh, it's so much more powerful. It's not like that. What you do feel is it's snappier, it's picking the front end up easier, so it's definitely making more power, and it's delivering that power more quickly. But when you go from 14,000 and beyond, that's where the big power difference is. And so when you're up here, I would say, and I believe from the dyno videos that I've seen from Chris, out here in that 250 as you're getting up towards redline, there's probably a 25 horsepower difference because it stopped pulling at 4. You could still rev it, but the horsepower dropped from, you know, if it was at 115 stock, it might have dropped down into the 80s. I mean, it was a massive drop. And so now it'll slowly taper off, but out here at 15.2, I may, if my peak horsepower now at the tune and the slip-on and stuff is 118 horsepower, let's say, because that seems about average for these, out here it might drop to 115, 114, something like that, but that's better than the 85 that it was. So you can rev it longer and harder and keep accelerating, and when you're in 6th gear, that top gear, you're normally limited by, like, you kind of hit your top speed at your peak power, which if it was at 14,000, you're only going to go so fast. Because anything more than that, at 149, 150, 155 miles an hour, whatever this thing topped out at, you would have an issue there where you hit 14,000 and you still got revs to go, but all of a sudden you lose 25, 30 horsepower, and now it doesn't have enough power to keep pushing through the wind at that speed, so you basically just hit an aerodynamic wall. What gets you top speed is, yeah, gearing's involved because you can't exceed your gearing, but it's horsepower. It's not like the weight of the bike. Weight of the bike it has the biggest impact on things like acceleration and braking and stuff. But when it comes to top speed, your number one limiting factor is going to be, do you have enough horsepower to overcome the drag coefficient of the air pushing back at you? And the faster you go, the more horsepower it takes to go that much faster. It's kind of a linear progression. So I did do a top speed run down the interstate the other day, and I was getting, and my cop friends and my dad, earmuffs. But I did hit an indicated 155, and that's when it stopped pulling, and it was about 14,000 RPMs. It wouldn't rev any faster than that. You can rev a little further than that in lower gears, but there's no point. You shift at 14,000 because that's what the peak power was, and after that you're just losing power. So I did hit that speed, and it just stopped pulling even though I had revs to go. So I don't like going that fast on the road, and I really rarely ever do that, very rarely. But I just had an open stretch of highway where there was concrete on both sides, so I could see there was no police, there was nobody, the road was almost deserted. So for about 25 seconds I just let it rip just to see what it would do. I think it'll do a considerably higher top speed, and I know that's indicated 155. It was probably only 148, 149, maybe 150. But now I might be able to hit an honest 155, 158. The odometer or the speedometer will probably read 165, but accounting for speedo error, I could probably hit a little bit more. But it's definitely wheeling more. It's snappier. I don't know if it's as fast as that. Top speed, it'll definitely blow that away because that has no wind protection. I mean, that little fly screen here isn't doing much of anything. Looks nice, but doesn't really do a whole lot. So this will out accelerate that, I think, but not as much as it was before. Before there was probably 10 horsepower difference peak, and this had more mid-range and more torque. So this will probably still slowly walk away from that up to a point, but that will ultimately run this thing down and will blow it away top speed, probably by a pretty hefty margin. So it felt great. Chris did a great job. I mean, he was real accommodating. I called him and said, hey, I had my afternoon open up. Can you squeeze me in? He's like, yeah, it takes 10 minutes. I got a bike on the dyno, but yeah, just come on in and I'll take care of you. So I went up there, cost me $200, flashed it, got my extra power there up top, smoothed it out, gave me a much more responsive throttle, eliminated the O2 sensor. This little thing rips, man. It's a great little bike. So definitely happy with the tune. I would check him out. I'll put a link to Moore Mafia, but he's got a great YouTube channel and he does a lot of cool stuff. So I'm probably going to take out that one tomorrow, but go up to the mountains with it. But real happy with the results. Definitely made a difference. It's not placebo. I've had enough bikes and spent enough hours in the dyno room to where I've gotten pretty finely tuned on my butt dyno. But definitely made a difference. It is probably the best $200 you'll spend on a ZX6R. Really wakes it up. So I'll go ahead and stop yapping now, and we'll throw in some riding video of today's ride just to show you how it accelerated and some of the stuff. But yeah, very cool. Definitely recommend it.